My unfaithful wife came home, cheerful after dinner, with another man, but found a note from her husband, who already knew everything. Sup Reddit, my name is Tyler, and I'm 29 years old. I've been living in Miami for several years now, and I've never once regretted making that move. This city, with its eternal sunshine and pristine ocean beaches, fits perfectly with my lifestyle and everything I've worked to build for myself. I work as a marketing manager for a large corporation, and I'm fortunate to be making good money, a high salary that affords me certain luxuries. I live in a prestigious area of the city, drive an expensive car, and honestly, I never have to make sacrifices when it comes to the pleasures and comforts I want in life. From the outside looking in, my life probably seems perfect, like one of those carefully curated Instagram feeds where everything looks flawless and effortless. I've been with my wife Jessica for 8 years total, and we've been married for 5 of those years. Everything between us had always seemed solid and stable, or at least that's what I believed at the time. I thought we had built something real together, something that could weather any storm. But then came that day when everything changed. Jessica had left the front door open behind her when she came home, and I still remember the distinct sound of her heels clicking softly against the wooden floor of our entryway. The clicking slowed down as she stepped into the living room, and then she called out in that particular tone of hers, breezy and careless, like nothing in the world could ever touch her or disturb her perfect little bubble. "I'm back," she sang out cheerfully. What she didn't know was that I had no idea what was waiting for her. Not yet, anyway. I didn't say a single word when she walked in, didn't even bother to look up at her at first. I was sitting at our dining table with my elbows planted firmly on the surface, staring down at a single sheet of paper that I had placed there deliberately. There were more documents, of course, dozens of them, maybe even more than that. But I had chosen to lay just one out, right in the center of the table, the one that mattered most. It was a still image from a security camera, cropped and zoomed in for clarity. Derek's face was clearly visible, as was her face, and they were both positioned far too close to each other, both wearing genuine smiles that spoke volumes about their relationship. Jessica stopped walking the moment she saw the photograph, freezing mid-step like someone had suddenly hit the pause button on her entire body. I still didn't look up at her, but I could hear the faint sound of her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a sharp intake followed by an ugly, uncomfortable silence that seemed to stretch between us. Then, slowly, her voice cracked through the air like breaking glass. "What? What is this?" she asked, though it was really a stupid question. She already knew exactly what she was looking at. I finally raised my eyes to meet hers. Her makeup was still fresh and perfectly applied, which bothered me more than it probably should have. Her mascara was perfectly curled. Her foundation wasn't even slightly smudged, despite whatever activities she had been engaged in just an hour earlier. Her shirt was a little wrinkled, though, creased at the shoulder in a way that didn't match how fabric would naturally wrinkle from wearing a seatbelt. Something about that particular wrinkle told me the truth more honestly than anything she was about to say. "Sit," I said simply. She blinked at me with that deer-in-headlights kind of expression. I watched as her hand tightened around her purse strap, and for a moment I thought she might actually try to run. But where could she go? The door was right behind her, still wide open with sunlight pouring in like the world outside still made perfect sense. I gestured toward the chair across from me again. "Sit," I repeated. She stepped closer, moving slowly and cautiously. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she calculated her options, thinking about how she could pivot this situation, what she could possibly say, what I might or might not know, how much I had actually seen. But eventually she did sit down across from me, her fingers immediately beginning to fidget nervously on the edge of the table. I didn't hand her anything else. I didn't need to. She reached forward on her own, pulled the photograph closer to herself, and stared down at it. Her nostrils flared slightly, and I realized it wasn't out of guilt or even fear. It was anger. She was angry because she had been exposed, because I had seen what she was doing, because I had documented it and printed it out and framed it with timestamps and irrefutable proof. Still, she tried to play her usual games. "Baby," she said, her voice immediately softening and dipping into that rehearsed tremble that she had always used when she was lying to me. It was a tone I had heard countless times before, and now I recognized it for exactly what it was. "It's not what it looks like," she continued, reaching across the table toward my hand. I pulled my hand away before she could make contact. Her fingers hovered in the air for a moment, looking humiliated and awkward. "You want to try that again?" I said calmly. Her jaw tightened visibly. "You're spying on me now?" she shot back, her tone shifting immediately to defensive. I just stared at her. I didn't move, didn't twitch, didn't even blink. I gave her the silence that I knew she hated most, the kind that left her completely alone with her own reflection and the weight of what she had done. "You think I'm cheating? Is that what this is?" Her voice rose as she became more defensive and indignant. It was the classic flip that she always pulled. She had this way of going from cornered to cruel in an instant, like she was simply changing shoes. I let her finish her entire tantrum without saying a word. Then I reached under the stack of documents and slid the next piece of evidence forward. It was a hotel bill from last Tuesday, room 218, with Derek's name clearly printed on it. Then I slid another piece across the table, a screenshot of text messages. Her messages. One of them read, "You made me feel things I haven't felt in years." Then came another photograph, this one showing her leaving Derek's car about 5 blocks from our house. She was wearing the same clothes that she had told me she'd spilled wine on at her coworker's baby shower. I leaned forward slightly, finally speaking again. "I didn't think I needed to spy on you, but apparently I was wrong about that." She didn't speak this time. I watched it happen, watched her begin to crack and crumble. But she didn't fall apart completely, and she certainly didn't cry. That would have been too human for her. What she did instead was somehow worse. She completely switched off. Every trace of emotion vanished from her face like a light switch had been flipped, and in its place was something much colder, something that felt rehearsed and calculated. "Okay," she said, her voice flat and eerily quiet. "So now what?" That sentence, "So now what?" hit me like a slap across the face. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "It's over with him." Not, "How could I do this to you?" Not even a pathetic lie about it being some kind of mistake. No remorse whatsoever. No explanation, no accountability. Just that cold, detached question, like it was somehow my responsibility to figure out the ending to a story she had been writing behind my back for months. I looked at her sitting there across from me, and I was struck by the surreal nature of it all. This was the same woman I used to make tea for every single morning. The one who used to call me during my lunch breaks just to tell me she missed me. The same person who had held my hand in hospital waiting rooms and cried in my arms the day her dog died. And now here she was. This same woman who had just spent her afternoon getting very familiar with a man who signs his emails with "warmest regards." I said absolutely nothing in response to her question. And in that moment of silence, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. She wasn't worried about losing me. She wasn't concerned about the emotional devastation she had caused or the trust she had destroyed. She was worried about what I might take with me when I left, the practical consequences, the financial implications, the disruption to her comfortable life. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't even pretend to reach for some elaborate excuse or justification. She just sat there with her arms crossed, like she was waiting for an Uber to arrive. Like this entire confrontation was nothing more than some minor inconvenience that I had dropped onto her perfectly organized desk, somewhere between her nail appointments and yoga classes. "I asked you a question," she said again, with an edge of impatience in her voice. Like I somehow owed her an immediate answer. Now what? I leaned back in my chair, wanting desperately to feel something sharp and intense. Rage, heartbreak, maybe even panic. But all I could feel was this strange humming sensation, that numb buzz you get in your chest when your mind is still crashing and burning, but your body has already stepped outside the wreckage and is surveying the damage from a safe distance. Her eyes didn't look sad or remorseful. They looked annoyed, like I was being unnecessarily difficult. "This is what you've been doing behind my back?" I asked, my voice coming out quieter than I had expected it to. "Lying to my face every single day and screwing around with some guy who sends stock market tips in group chats?" She tilted her head slightly and had the audacity to say, "Don't be dramatic, Tyler." Dramatic? I nearly laughed. Not a real laugh, but one of those dry, sarcastic exhales that escape when your brain simply gives up trying to process the absurdity of a situation. "That's your response to all of this?" I said. "What do you want me to say?" She shot back defensively. "You've already made up your mind about everything." "No," I replied firmly. "I found the truth. You're the one who spent the last 5 months making up your mind about us." She stood up then, slowly and deliberately, like she was performing on some kind of stage. Like she needed the height advantage to regain control of the room and the conversation. "You were never around," she said flatly, launching into what I immediately recognized as her prepared defense. "You were always working late. You were always tired, always stressed out about something. I tried to talk to you, Tyler. You shut me out for months. And there it was. The shift, the gaslighting, the precise moment where I somehow became the villain in her affair story. I stood up as well, remaining calm. Too calm, probably. You mean like when you started turning off your location sharing? I asked evenly. When you began coming home and getting straight into the shower before even saying hello to me? When you stopped looking me in the eye during dinner? She flinched slightly at that. You think I wanted to work those long hours? I continued, keeping my voice perfectly level. You think I didn't miss us? You think I didn't lay awake at night wondering what the hell had happened to you? To us? She looked away for just a second, but it was enough. The silence between us suddenly felt sharp and cutting. Then she whispered, It just happened. No, I said firmly. You let it happen. Repeatedly. This wasn't some accidental slip. You made deliberate choices over and over again. And right there, in that moment, her carefully constructed mask slipped completely. Oh, please, she muttered, folding her arms across her chest again, in that defensive posture I knew so well. I didn't plan any of this. Derek listened to me. He made me feel seen, she continued, her voice taking on a petulant tone. He wasn't perfect, but at least he didn't look at me like I was just some roommate. That word roommate. After everything we had been through together. After 8 years of loyalty and commitment. After birthdays and funerals and vacations where I had carried her bags through airports while she scrolled through Instagram. After the miscarriage we had endured together. Those nights when we cried in silence while holding each other like lifelines. After all of that, I was apparently nothing more than a roommate to her now. I guess Derek didn't mind lying to his wife either, I said. That comment hit its mark. I saw a small flinch cross her face, though she tried to hide it. And for the first time since this conversation began, her voice cracked. Not with genuine emotion, but with pure spite. Fine, you know what? Yes, I screwed up, she said. But so did you. You pushed me away from you. She was trying to rewrite our entire history in real time, attempting to frame this whole situation like it was some kind of accident. Like I had somehow left the door open, and she had just wandered out and accidentally fallen into Derek's arms. I didn't let her finish weaving that particular fantasy. Instead, I pulled out a manila envelope, one she didn't know about yet and hadn't seen coming. Inside was a copy of burner phone logs that my friend Travis had helped me track down, along with a calendar invitation for next week's yoga retreat. The same retreat that just so happened to be taking place at the exact same resort where Derek was scheduled to visit for a business conference. Same dates, same city, same convenient coincidence. Her face went pale as she stared at the documents. I was going to tell you about the trip, she blurted out, throwing her hands up like I was about to arrest her. When? I asked. After your spiritual awakening in the hotel hot tub? She bit down on her lip, that same lip she had used to kiss me goodbye this very morning, before leaving to go sleep with another man in broad daylight. You really went through my things, she said, her voice filled with indignation, as if I was the one who had violated some sacred trust. I stared at her for a long moment. You destroyed this marriage, Jessica. I'm just sweeping up the glass. For a moment, we stood there in complete silence, the weight of everything hanging between us like a toxic cloud. And then she said it. The thing that twisted the knife in my ribs and made this entire nightmare feel completely real. Well, if you had paid more attention to me, maybe I wouldn't have needed Derek. That was it. That was the line, the point of no return. I don't know what I had expected her to say in this moment, but it certainly wasn't that. Not that cold, hollow statement that she dropped like it was just some throwaway insult from a trashy television drama. If you had paid more attention to me. She said it like she actually meant it, like I had somehow driven her into the arms of a married man with my silence and my spreadsheets and my work responsibilities. Like I deserved this betrayal. Something fundamental shifted inside me in that moment. It wasn't a snap or a burst of anger. It was a heavy, irreversible settling, like a foundation finally giving way. This wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't shock or disbelief. This was absolute clarity. You needed Derek? I repeated, my voice completely flat. You needed the guy who calls you kitten in text messages and spells definitely with an A? She actually rolled her eyes at me. Rolled them like I was being petty and unreasonable, like I was somehow the problem in this equation. I'm not doing this with you, she said, turning to grab her purse. Oh no, you're not walking away from this, I said, stepping around the table to block her path. Not until you stop lying and actually own what you've done. She froze, then spun around on her heel to face me. What more do you want me to say, Tyler? I made a mistake. I was lonely. I felt neglected. He was there when I needed someone. It happened. End of story. No, it kept happening, I shot back. You didn't trip and fall into his bed once by accident. You scheduled this like it was a weekly doctor's appointment. Her lips tightened into a thin line as she crossed her arms again, in that same tired, defensive posture she always used whenever she didn't want to admit she was wrong. You weren't giving me what I needed, she said slowly, as if speaking to a child. You haven't for a long time. And instead of telling me that directly, I replied, you started playing house with someone else. I tried talking to you, she insisted. No, you hinted, I corrected her. You dropped vague complaints between Netflix episodes and expected me to read your mind while you were texting him under the covers at night. I stepped closer to her, and she didn't move away. I gave you everything, Jessica. Years of my life, my trust, my loyalty. I let you into every part of who I am, and you used all of that to cover your tracks while you planned your little getaways with a man who lies to his kids the same way you've been lying to me. Her jaw clenched visibly, but there was still no apology. Not even a flicker of genuine guilt or remorse. Just more of that cold, performative detachment. And then she said something that was clearly meant to hurt me, but it didn't. It just proved what I already knew about who she really was. You've always made everything so heavy, Tyler, she said with a dismissive tone. Every conversation feels like I'm on trial. I needed something easy, something fun. Easy. Fun. That's what I had been competing with this entire time. Not love, not passion, not even genuine connection. Just convenience and shallow entertainment. You threw away a decade for fun, I said quietly. I was tired of being the only one trying, she shot back. You stopped seeing me. And maybe there was a grain of truth buried somewhere in that accusation. Maybe I had stopped seeing her at some point. But what she didn't understand, what she never wanted to understand, was that she had stopped being herself long before I stopped looking. And she had never given me a real chance to save what we had. I stepped back and picked up the final piece of evidence I hadn't shown her yet. A printout of a text message she had sent to Derek just last weekend. It read, "If he ever finds out, I'll just spin it. He's too passive to leave." I held it up so she could read it clearly. She looked at the message and her mouth parted slightly, like maybe, just maybe, she had finally gone too far even for her own standards. Was that fun too? I asked. She didn't answer my question, but her silence said absolutely everything I needed to know. She didn't say a single word. Not when I showed her that damning message. Not when I stepped back and let the silence stretch into something brittle and uncomfortable. This was the same woman who could run her mouth for hours whenever we argued about the thermostat setting or whose turn it was to do laundry, but now she had suddenly gone completely mute. Good. Let her feel the weight of what she had done. I let the paper drop to the floor between us, and it seemed to fall in slow motion. You really thought I wouldn't find out? I said, my voice quieter now, with no edge left in it. You were so sure that I'd stay, that I'd just roll over and take the hit and keep pretending like nothing had happened. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. That smug self-certainty she had always carried around like armor was completely gone now, replaced by something I hadn't seen on her face in years. Doubt. But it wasn't guilt or remorse. It was just fear of losing control of the situation. I walked past her to the kitchen counter and grabbed a small cardboard box that I had stashed beneath the sink earlier. It wasn't particularly big because it didn't need to be. She turned around slowly when she heard the sound of packing tape being ripped off. "What is that?" she asked, her voice uncertain for the first time. "Your things," I said calmly, placing the box on the table. "The ones that were in our bedroom, your drawer, your side of the closet, your stuff from the bathroom cabinet." I packed what I could fit. Her face twisted with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You're kicking me out?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm asking you to leave. That's very different." She let out a laugh. But it wasn't a real laugh. It was this nasty, bitter scoff that shot straight through the middle of my chest like a blade. "Oh, now you want to act like a man after all this," she sneered. There it was again. That concentrated bile she always kept on standby, ready to deploy whenever she didn't get her way. The bitterness she could spit out like venom anytime someone dared to hold her accountable. "You don't get to do this!" she snapped. "This is my house too!" "No, it's our house," I corrected her. "Or at least it was our house. You made it his house when you brought him into our relationship behind my back." "I never brought him here," she said quickly, defensively. I tilted my head and looked at her. "That's supposed to make me feel better somehow?" Her mouth opened and then shut again. She had no script prepared for this part of the conversation. No clever lie ready to deploy, no damage control strategy. She had spent so long being one step ahead of me that she had forgotten what it felt like to be completely exposed and caught. "I have nowhere to go," she said, her voice softer now as desperation began threading through her words. "Then call your yoga partner," I replied without hesitation. "I'm sure Derek's got a spare room somewhere between the wife and 2 kids he's lying to." Her lips pressed together into a thin, tight line. "You're being cruel." "No," I said, finally locking eyes with her directly. "Cruel would have been cheating on you. Cruel would have been lying to you for 5 straight months. Cruel would have been treating you like an idiot while smiling in your face every single day. Cruel would have been gaslighting the person who loved you into thinking he was the problem." She said nothing in response to that. I walked around the table again, past her toward the front door. I opened it wide, letting the afternoon sunlight pour into our foyer. "Take the box," I said simply, "and go." She just stood there, frozen in place. "Jessica," I added, my voice sharper now, "don't make me call someone to come help you pack." Still, she didn't move. Her eyes flicked back and forth between the table, the open door, and me. She looked like she was about to cry, but no actual tears came. And I realized in that moment that it wasn't grief or sadness I was seeing on her face. It was wounded pride. Her ego simply couldn't handle this situation. She was losing, and for someone like her, that was the worst kind of betrayal imaginable. She finally stepped forward and picked up the cardboard box, handling it with this wounded dignity that was so obviously fake it nearly made me physically sick. "You're going to regret this," she muttered under her breath as she headed toward the door. "No," I said calmly. "You're just mad that you don't get to walk away first." She didn't reply to that. She simply turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the floor again in the same rhythm as when she had arrived. Only now there was no confident hum in her voice, no swagger in her step. Just silence and the sound of someone who had finally been held accountable. I closed the door behind her and stood there for a long moment with my hand still resting on the doorknob, almost expecting her to knock again, to pound on the door, to scream or cry or do something dramatic. But she didn't. There was just silence. Not even the sound of her car engine starting. I didn't check to see if she was still standing out there waiting for me to change my mind. That part of me, the part that used to chase after her and smooth over every blow-up and try to fix things even when I wasn't the one who had broken them, was gone. For the first time in months, the house felt real again. I stood there for a long time after the door had shut, my hands still resting on the knob like I was expecting her to knock again, to pound on the wood, to scream or cry or do something. But she didn't. There was just complete silence. Not even the sound of her car engine starting up outside. I didn't check to see what she was doing out there. I didn't want to know if she was still standing on the sidewalk, waiting for me to change my mind and come running after her. That part of me. The part that used to chase after her whenever she got upset. The part that would smooth over every blow-up and try to fix things, even when I wasn't the one who had broken them. That part was completely gone now. I walked back into the kitchen, where the manila envelope still sat on the table, with half the photographs spilling out across the wooden surface like scattered ash. I stared at them again. Not because I needed any more proof or confirmation, but because I still couldn't quite believe how far she had actually gone. The angles of the photos, the timestamps, the goddamn smiles on both their faces. She looked genuinely happy in those pictures. Not guilty, not hesitant, not conflicted about what she was doing. Just happy. Like she had finally been able to exhale after holding her breath for 8 years with me. It made me wonder if any of our relationship had ever been real. I picked up my phone from the counter. There were 2 unread messages waiting for me. Jessica, "I don't have a place to go tonight. Are you seriously doing this?" Jessica sent 5 minutes later. "Fine. Hope you enjoy being alone with your paranoia." Paranoia. That word hit me like a physical blow. She had used that exact word more than once over the past few months whenever I brought up questions about her schedule. Her sudden passionate love for late meetings and group yoga sessions, her habit of turning her phone face down during dinner. She would scoff and call me paranoid, insecure, controlling. And like an idiot, I had believed her. I had swallowed that poison with a smile, thinking that maybe I really was being clingy and possessive. Maybe I needed to back off and give her more space. God, I hated how stupid I had been. I put the phone down without responding. She could sit in her car all night for all I cared. I was completely done speaking her language of half-truths and guilt trips disguised as affection. I went upstairs slowly, and every step felt like a memory trying to crawl up my spine and attach itself to me. We had bought this house together. I still remembered carrying her across the threshold like some old-school cliché, her laughing and telling me she felt like she was in a romantic movie. We had painted these walls together. We had picked out curtains and argued over area rugs. We had built a life here, and she had infected every inch of it. I opened the bedroom door slowly. Our bed, my bed now, was still perfectly made with the same sheets and pillows we had been sharing. There was even that little vanilla-scented spray she liked to spritz on her side of the blanket every night before going to sleep. I stripped everything off that bed like my life depended on it. I tore every trace of her presence from that mattress like it was rotting wood that needed to be removed before it could spread. The sheets went straight into a trash bag. I didn't want to wash them. I wanted them completely gone. The mattress cover went in too, along with her pillow and the perfume bottle she kept on the nightstand. I pulled open her dresser drawer, which was still full of all the little things she had left behind. Lip balm, hair ties, and a cheap necklace I'd given her on our 3rd anniversary. I grabbed it all and dumped everything into the same trash bag. When I was finally done, the room looked hollow and empty, but it also looked clean for the first time in months. It was almost midnight when I finally sat down on the edge of the stripped mattress, feeling completely exhausted, but also strangely wired. I hadn't cried yet. I thought I would have by now. I had expected some kind of dramatic breakdown, some emotional crash after the adrenaline wore off. But there was nothing like that. Just this low, steady throb of betrayal pulsing through my chest, and underneath it, something else that felt surprisingly like relief. Not because I was glad this had happened, but because the truth was finally out in the open. No more lies, no more pretending, no more walking on eggshells. Just me and a long, quiet road ahead that I couldn't see the end of yet. I didn't sleep that night. God knows I tried. I lay there on the stripped mattress in that empty room, staring at the ceiling while the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs provided the only sound in the house. It used to be her breathing that filled the silence. Sometimes she would snore very lightly, barely audible unless you were specifically listening for it. I realized then that I had been listening for it every single night, even in my sleep. Some part of me had been constantly tuned to her presence, and now there was just nothing. At 3:17 in the morning, I got up. My body moved before I even knew what I was doing. I went to the guest room, the one we had always said we would turn into a home office, but never actually did anything with. I opened the closet and pulled down a cardboard box labeled Tyler Stuff in my own handwriting. Inside were old journals, notebooks, and backup drives from years past. I found a leather-bound journal that I hadn't touched in years and flipped it open. There, in my own handwriting, were entries from when Jessica and I had first started dating. "She makes me want to be softer," I had written. "I don't think I've ever been seen like this before." I almost laughed, or maybe gagged. It was hard to tell which reaction was trying to surface. I kept reading through the journal entries, and one in particular caught me completely off guard. It was dated right after our honeymoon trip. "She cried this morning," I had written. "Said she didn't think she deserved me. I told her I'd spend the rest of our lives proving that she did. I meant it. And I had meant it. I really, truly had meant every single word I had ever said to her. Through all the fights and financial strain, through the years when we couldn't get pregnant, through the moments when we nearly gave up on everything. I had meant every promise, every vow, every declaration of love I had ever made to her. But she didn't even flinch when she struck the match and dropped it on everything we had built together. My phone buzzed at 4:02 in the morning. It was another message from her. "Jessica, I'm staying at Casey's tonight. I need to come by tomorrow for my things. Please don't touch anything else." The tone of that message, "Please don't touch anything else," was incredible. Like I was the one being reckless and destructive. Like I was the one who had crossed some sacred line. Her things. She was lucky I hadn't dragged everything she owned to the curb in the middle of the night. But I didn't reply to her message. The next morning, I left the house before she was scheduled to show up. I couldn't stand the idea of seeing her again, not yet. I didn't want to deal with her crying. I didn't want to hear her shouting. And I didn't want anything else from her anymore. The very idea of her physical presence in that house felt like rot spreading through the walls. I went to my brother's place instead. Connor is 2 years younger than me, married with 2 kids. He opened the front door wearing sweatpants and a coffee-stained t-shirt, took one look at me, and didn't ask a single question about what had happened. He just looked at me and said, You staying for a while? I nodded. Yeah, if that's okay with you. He clapped me on the back. You're not sleeping on the couch. I'll clear out the guest room for you. That's the thing about real family. You don't need to explain the disaster in detail. They see the wreckage and just start pulling you out of it without asking for a full report first. That night, I crashed hard in Connor's guest bed. I didn't even bother taking off my shoes. I just dropped into the mattress and let sleep hit me like a brick wall. But not before I saw one final message from her on my phone. Jessica, I'm picking up the rest of my things tomorrow. Please don't be there. Please don't be there. Even now, she was still a coward. Even after everything, she couldn't look me in the eyes and face what she had done. She wanted a clean exit, completely free of consequences. She wanted to vanish without having to feel the weight of reality crashing down on her. But this isn't a movie. This is my real life. And tomorrow, she was finally going to see what truth looks like when it's standing in the ruins she created. She showed up the next day, right on time, 11 a.m. sharp, just like she had probably planned. I didn't listen to her text message request. I wasn't going to vanish from my own house just so she could ghost her way out of accountability. No way. I sat in the living room, calm and composed, dressed like I had somewhere important to be even though I didn't. Not yet, anyway. She walked in carrying a cardboard box and wearing sunglasses, even though it was cloudy outside. I could smell her perfume before I actually saw her. The same scent I used to love, the one that now made me feel physically nauseous. When she saw me sitting there, she froze in the doorway. You said you wouldn't be here, she muttered. I said nothing, I replied evenly. You asked me not to be here. There's a difference. Her jaw tightened visibly. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her, setting her empty box down by the stairs. I just want to get my stuff and go. Then do that, I said simply. She didn't move for a few seconds. She was looking around the room, taking inventory. The couch was bare now. Her decorative throw pillows were gone. Her framed photos had been removed from the shelves. Her books had already been boxed up. I had done half the work for her. You went through my things, she said after a moment, her voice accusatory. I stood up and walked toward the window. I removed your belongings from my room, my closet, my house. What's left is what you left behind. You had no right, she said. I turned to face her. No right? I had no right to clean a space that you tainted? You lost your rights when you started playing dress-up in hotel rooms with someone else's husband. She flinched, but only barely. I don't want to fight with you, she said, finally taking off her sunglasses. Her eyes were bloodshot, though not from crying. I knew her well enough to know that. It was probably from lack of sleep, or maybe from some rushed performance she had put on in front of whoever she was staying with now. Casey, or maybe even Derek. Honestly, it didn't matter to me anymore. I'm not here to fight, I said calmly. I'm here to watch you leave properly this time. She looked around the room again, her eyes falling on the manila envelope I had deliberately left on the kitchen counter, the same one from 2 days ago. She walked over to it slowly and opened it again, like she needed to remind herself that her fantasy was actually over. You're not even going to try? She asked, not looking at me directly. Try what? I responded. Try to win back someone who lied to me every single day for half a year? Someone who used my trust as camouflage while she planned a future around how stupid she thought I was? She turned back toward me, and for the first time her voice cracked. Not with fake sadness, but with real anger. I was miserable, Tyler, she said. I didn't feel wanted. You never saw me anymore. I felt invisible. No, I said coldly. You didn't feel invisible. You felt bored. That statement shut her up completely. You wanted to be desired and worshipped, I continued. You wanted to feel 25 again. And you found someone dumb enough to tell you exactly what you wanted to hear. Instead of coming to me, your husband, you picked the path that made you feel new and exciting. Her face contorted, and I thought she might actually cry for real this time. But no, she swallowed it down and said, It wasn't supposed to be serious. I stepped closer to her. But it was serious enough to lie about. Serious enough to sleep with him every Tuesday. Serious enough to kiss me goodnight afterward like nothing had happened. Serious enough to risk everything we had built together for absolutely nothing. I didn't plan to fall for him, she said defensively. But you planned everything else, I replied without hesitation. She blinked hard. So, what now? I didn't hesitate for even a second. You take your boxes, you take your lies, and you leave. No more text messages, no more phone calls, no more updates about your feelings, and the divorce proceedings are already in motion. That last part stunned her visibly. You're serious about this? Yes, I said firmly. For the first time in a long time, I'm being very, very serious about something. Her face dropped, not out of heartbreak or genuine remorse, but out of pure defeat. And that's when I realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. She still didn't think I would actually go through with it. Even after everything that had happened, even after all the evidence and confrontations, she still believed that I would eventually fold, that I needed her too much to follow through with my threats. She was wrong. She gathered her belongings in complete silence after that conversation. No more speeches about her feelings. No more desperate pleas for understanding. Just the scraping sound of cardboard boxes being filled and the final removal of a liar from my life. When she left, she didn't say goodbye to me. Good. I didn't say goodbye to her either. She was gone by noon. The door clicked shut behind her with no ceremony, no lingering glances, no "maybe we can still talk about this" or fake apologies as parting gifts. Just the echo of her heels clicking down the walkway, the soft slam of her car trunk, and then the hum of her engine fading into the distance. I stood in the foyer for a long time, still listening and half expecting her to turn around and come back. But she didn't. She left exactly like she had lived those last 5 months. Fast, calculated, and without looking back. I wish I could say that I felt free immediately, but what I actually felt was much heavier than that. It was like someone had carefully peeled away my skin and left all my nerves completely exposed to the open air. The first thing I did was open every single window in the house. The entire place still smelled like her. That vanilla spray she used, her ridiculous coconut shampoo, those floral dryer sheets she always insisted on buying despite my preference for unscented ones. I opened every window and let the cold July air sweep through the rooms. The silence became wind, and that helped somehow. Then I started moving with purpose. I stripped the bed again, this time down to the bare frame. I hauled the mattress out of the room by myself, one awkward lurch at a time. I replaced every towel and every single dish she had picked out from that overpriced home decor store. Even that fake eucalyptus plant she had claimed tied the room together went straight into the trash. She was everywhere in that house. But now I was methodically undoing her presence. I wasn't doing it out of spite or revenge. I was reclaiming my space, taking back what was mine. The memories were the hardest things to deal with, and I don't mean the framed photographs. We never really had that many pictures together anyway. I'm talking about the invisible memories that lived in every corner. Her humming while folding laundry. Her bare feet up on the kitchen counter while she gossiped about her coworkers. The way her towel always hung crooked on the bathroom rack no matter how many times I straightened it. It wasn't grief exactly. It was more like erosion. This slow, invisible wearing down of everything I had thought was solid and permanent. The doorbell rang around 2 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. But when I opened the door, there was Connor standing on my porch holding a 12-pack of beer and a pizza box, like it was some kind of care package from the front lines of a war. "I figured today might be rough," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I didn't say anything at first. I just shut the door behind him and followed him into the kitchen. He popped open a beer and slid one across the counter to me. "I always hated her," he said casually after taking his first sip. I looked up at him in surprise. He just shrugged. She had that fake nice thing going on, like she practiced her laugh in the mirror every morning. "You could have said something to me about it," I pointed out. He took another sip and looked at me directly. "Would you have listened?" I didn't answer that question because we both already knew the truth. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, him eating pizza while I just held my bottle without really drinking from it. Eventually, I asked the question that I hadn't said out loud to anyone yet. "What if I really was the problem, though?" Connor put down his slice and looked at me seriously. "You weren't." "How do you know that for sure?" "Because I know you," he said simply. "And I saw how much you gave her, how much you let slide that you shouldn't have." But what if she was right about some of it? What if I really did stop trying? "She didn't want you to try," Connor said firmly. "She wanted you to chase after her constantly. There's a big difference between those two things. One is real effort, and the other is just playing games." That observation hit me harder than I had expected it to. We talked for hours after that exchange, about nothing in particular, about everything in general. It was the first real conversation I had experienced in weeks that didn't feel like some kind of test or interrogation. When Connor finally left that evening, I felt a little lighter. Still raw and damaged, still completely ruined by what had happened. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel completely alone in dealing with it. That night, I sat on the back porch with all the lights turned off, just me sitting in the darkness. And for the first time, I let myself actually think about the future. Not the future that Jessica and I had planned together, but the one I was about to rebuild from scratch. Days that would belong entirely to me, shaped by my own choices and desires. The days that followed blurred together in a strange, mechanical way. They were quiet and stripped of the familiar rhythm I had grown accustomed to, but they were still moving forward. That was the strangest part of this whole experience. Life didn't stop, not even for betrayal. The sun kept rising every morning. Bills still showed up in the mailbox. Dishes still needed to be washed and put away. But something fundamental had changed inside me. There was a shift, a dull ache that lived just beneath the surface of everything I did. It wasn't sharp like the initial impact had been, but it was persistent, like your body remembering an old injury even after the wound has completely healed. Jessica didn't contact me again. No phone calls, no text messages, not even a passive-aggressive social media post designed to get my attention. She vanished from my life just like I had told her to do. But that didn't mean she was actually gone from my daily experience. Everywhere I went, I saw traces of her. Not physically. I mean the residue of our shared life together. I'd walk past the corner coffee shop and suddenly remember how she used to steal sips from my cup while pretending she didn't like oat milk. I'd hear a song on the radio that she used to hum while doing her makeup in the bathroom mirror. I'd open the refrigerator and find that damn jar of artichoke dip she bought every single week, but never finished. Grief, I learned, has no logic to it. It doesn't follow a predictable path or timeline. It loops and stutters and throws curveballs at you when you're just trying to make it through a simple grocery store run without breaking down in front of the cucumber display. One afternoon, about a week after she had left for good, I came home and found a padded envelope sitting on my front porch. There was no name on it, no note or explanation. Inside were her keys to the house and her wedding ring. No explanation, no final message, just cold metal and silence. I stared at that ring for what felt like an hour. That stupid little circle that used to mean everything to both of us. I remembered saving up money for it, hiding it in the drawer beneath my socks for weeks, rehearsing my proposal speech in my car until I could say it without stuttering like an idiot. And now it just sat there in my palm, cold and empty, like it had never meant anything at all. I didn't cry when I saw it, but I did something I hadn't done since this whole ordeal started. I got angry. Not the yelling, dish-breaking kind of anger, but something much deeper and more righteous and focused. I took that ring, walked upstairs to my desk, and pulled open the bottom drawer where I had been keeping all the divorce paperwork I had started filing. I grabbed the black leather folder and spread every single document across the desk surface, and I signed every single one of them. No hesitation, no second-guessing, no moments of doubt. Just my name written again and again, as if I was carving myself out of a contract I had never actually agreed to in the first place. I didn't tell her about it, didn't send a text message, didn't give her any kind of warning. I let the paperwork speak for itself. That night, I went out alone to a bar I hadn't visited in years. I wasn't looking for conversation or company. I wasn't trying to numb anything or distract myself from reality. I just wanted to sit in a place where absolutely no one knew me as Jessica's husband. I ordered a drink and sat at the far end of the bar, watching people laugh and flirt and lie to each other about their jobs and their intentions. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't envy any of them, because I wasn't pretending anymore. I was completely done with pretending. 3 weeks after she left, I found one of her sweaters in the dryer. It was that blue one with the ripped sleeve that she always wore when she was hungover, or when she was pretending to be cozy and comfortable. It smelled like dryer sheets, and that lingering trace of her perfume that refused to completely fade, no matter how many times I washed things. I held it for exactly 1 second, just 1 second, and then I shoved it into the trash without thinking twice about it. That's how it had to be from now on. No more keeping pieces of her around like they were souvenirs from a war I never signed up to fight. No more trying to decode the past and figure out exactly where everything went wrong. It went wrong because she made it go wrong. She looked at everything we had built together over 8 years and decided it wasn't exciting enough, wasn't shiny enough, wasn't new and thrilling enough for her. So she struck a match and watched it all burn. Now I wasn't going to spend any more time sweeping up the ashes. I was going to rebuild something entirely new. The divorce paperwork moved through the legal system faster than I had expected. Too fast, honestly. Turns out that when adultery is involved and there's clear evidence, the courts don't waste much time deliberating. My lawyer was a sharp, calm woman named Amanda who barely needed to ask me any questions. She glanced through the folder of evidence I handed her, the photos, text messages, and receipts, and simply said, "This won't take long at all." I asked her once, halfway through our second meeting, if she ever got tired of watching people's lives completely unravel in front of her. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "No. What gets to me is how many people choose to stay in these situations." That comment stuck with me because I had almost been one of those people who stayed. If I hadn't followed my gut instincts, if I hadn't asked for help from Travis, if I had kept convincing myself that the weirdness in our relationship was just stress or hormones or some temporary phase, I would still be living inside that lie. I'd still be sleeping next to someone who could look me directly in the eye and call me baby while texting another man under the dinner table. The thought made me feel physically nauseous, but it also made me grateful. One night, I sat on the back porch with a beer in my hand and thought deeply about who I was before Jessica came into my life. Not Tyler, the guy who got cheated on, not Tyler who had built a life with a woman who burned it all to the ground, but just me, the original version of myself that I used to know intimately. The guy who loved taking long drives with no particular destination, who frequented ugly dive bars with character, who made Sunday morning pancakes with way too much syrup. The version of me who used to dream big and bold, who didn't need anyone else's approval to feel worthwhile, who didn't shrink himself down to keep someone else comfortable and happy. That guy wasn't gone forever. He had just been quiet for too long, buried under 1,000 tiny compromises and fake smiles and, "It's okay, I understand," nods at the end of pointless arguments that never resolved anything. I looked up at the stars that night, feeling the cool air and perfect stillness around me. And for the first time since Jessica had walked out of my life, I let myself actually miss her. Not because I wanted her back. I absolutely did not. But because I needed to finally feel the absence, the hole she had left, the complete betrayal of everything I had believed about us. I needed to let it pass all the way through me so it could finally be finished. I whispered to no one in particular, "Goodbye, Jessica?" And it didn't echo back to me or hang in the air. It just ended clean and final. The day the divorce was officially finalized felt like a funeral and a rebirth wrapped up in the same moment. I didn't go to court. My lawyer Amanda handled everything for me. Jessica signed all the papers without any fight or contest. She must have known she didn't have a leg to stand on legally, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Maybe Derek was promising her some exciting new life, filled with hotel sheets and secrets whispered in parking lots. I didn't ask for details and didn't want to know. All I got was an email from Amanda at 2:12 in the afternoon. The subject line read, "Finalized," and the body simply said, "It's done. You're free. Free." That single word hit me like a punch to the gut and a parachute opening at the same time. I stared at it for a long while, reading it over and over again like I needed the confirmation to become real. Like I needed that official statement that she could never hurt me again, that she no longer had any access to my future or my peace of mind. I got in my car and drove with no destination in mind, just forward motion. The sun was out, the sky was a soft blue color, and I realized I hadn't really noticed weather or beauty in weeks. I drove with the windows down and music playing low, my mind completely blank for once. Halfway through the drive, I stopped at this little roadside diner that we used to pass on the way to her parents' house. We had never gone inside because she always said it looked sketchy and probably had health code violations. But I had always wanted to try it. So I pulled into the parking lot, walked inside by myself, sat in a booth and ordered pancakes with black coffee. They were absolutely incredible. I ate slowly, soaking in the silence and the comfort of complete anonymity. No one in that place knew me or my story. No one looked at me like I was the guy whose wife cheated on him. I wasn't a headline or a pity case. I was just a man eating pancakes on his own terms. Afterward, I kept driving aimlessly and ended up at a quiet lake just outside of town, one I hadn't visited since high school. I used to come to this exact spot when I needed to think clearly, back when life felt overwhelming in much simpler ways. Failing grades, stupid fights with friends, my father's disappointed silence after I told him I didn't want to join the family business. I parked the car, stepped out, and sat on the hood while watching the water. And I let myself just be present in that moment. No plans for the future, no pressure to feel a certain way, no pretending that everything was fine. Just me, the lake, and a slow, quiet kind of peace that I hadn't experienced in months. I thought about what I would say to Jessica if she ever reached out to me again. And then I realized that I wouldn't say anything at all. Not out of anger or wounded pride, but simply because I didn't need to anymore. There was nothing left that needed to be said between us. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. It's been 2 months since Jessica walked out of my life, and I let her go. The ring is gone. Her perfume has finally faded from the curtains. I've replaced that vanilla spray with sandalwood, and I deleted that playlist she used to put on during Sunday cleaning sessions. My house doesn't feel like ours anymore. It feels like mine. And it's genuinely quiet here, peaceful in a way it hasn't been in over a year. There's no tension thickening the air, no second-guessing every word I say, no waiting for the other shoe to drop every time a phone buzzes with notifications. Just stillness and, more surprisingly, clarity. I've learned more about myself in these 2 months than I did during the last 2 years of our marriage. I've learned about boundaries and self-respect, about how easy it is to start shrinking yourself when someone you love starts treating you like you're in their way. I know now that love isn't supposed to feel like constantly trying to convince someone to stay with you. It's not supposed to be built on surveillance and suspicion, on keeping tabs and hiding receipts from each other. Love isn't supposed to be a test that you can fail. It's not supposed to feel like a balancing act where you keep bleeding just to keep the other person satisfied. What Jessica did, what she chose to do, wasn't an accident or a momentary slip in judgment. It was a consistent, deliberate betrayal that she layered with lies, excuses, and cheap little performances designed to distract me while she crafted an entirely separate life in secret. But here's what I've come to understand. She didn't break me as a person. She broke us as a couple, but I'm still here, standing, breathing, building again. I've started running regularly and joined a gym. I go out on Friday nights now, not to drink myself into oblivion or to flirt with strangers or to distract myself from reality, but just to exist around other people, to hear laughter, to remind myself that there's life beyond betrayal and heartbreak. I've also reconnected with old friends, people I had pushed away without even realizing it because all my emotional energy was going toward patching holes in a relationship that was already sinking. I even went on a date last week. Nothing serious, just coffee and conversation, but it felt real and easy. There were no lies hanging in the air between us, no undercurrents of resentment or suspicion. Just two people talking, smiling, and actually seeing each other clearly. I don't know what the future holds for me, and for the first time in a very long time, I'm completely okay with that uncertainty. If you're reading this story and going through something similar in your own life, let me say this to you. You don't need to stay loyal to someone who weaponizes your loyalty against you. You don't owe someone your silence while they destroy you with theirs. And you are absolutely not weak for walking away from a toxic situation. You're actually stronger for knowing when it's time to stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. Jessica left our marriage and our home, but I stayed in my own life. And now I'm finally beginning again, building something new and authentic. My name is Tyler, and I'm starting over.